As you guys know, Austin St. John was arrested for COVID fraud. He recently pled guilty and had to testify against his good friend or former friend, Cord Newman. Well, Cord Newman, after being found guilty, he motioned for a new trial, citing the lack of evidence and the fact that he didn't know what he was doing was illegal. Well, Austin St. John will be sentenced for his crime on May 1st, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. But we're not here to talk about his sentencing, which he's probably going to get 2 years probation. And, if that, 2 years might be generous. If you don't remember, Austin St. John, I'm only showing you this so you can have a general idea, did pretty much the same thing Cord Newman did. He got a government loan. He sent 10% to Moran, who got the government loan. He kept like $33,000 for himself, and he sent $170,000 to be invested in foreign accounts. Well, thank goodness, because of Cord Newman, he was requesting a new trial, requesting to be acquitted, pretty much requesting everything to go away based on evidence. Well, here is the official order from the judge denying his motions. And, there's a couple parts that we need to read. On September 13th, 2023, the grand jury issued a superseding indictment charging 12 defendants with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, also conspiracy to commit money laundering. The superseding indictment alleged that these defendants conspired to fraudulently apply for, receive, and misuse PPP loans in June 2020. This is all a true statement. Now we can scroll down some more, and now we have the case. It was tried to a jury over 4 days from February 3rd to February 6th. The government presented testimony of 12 witnesses, including co-conspirators. You guys are about to get some new information. Michael Hill, Andrew Moran, Jason Geiger, who we know as Austin St. John, Christopher McElrash, and Hector Reyes. The government also called agents, these names, who each testified regarding their investigation of the scheme. Another witness, this is a new witness that none of us knew about till today. Brandon Stevens testified to his incredulity when he received nearly $500,000 in PP loans after sending basic information to Hill and Moran. Stevens quickly returned the money he had received. So you see, a ninja who was in on it was like, okay, I'm going to send you my information. Got $500,000 and said, this ain't right. Sent that money back quick, fast. Further, the government submitted numerous exhibits, including text messages, which I showed you, Austin St. John's text messages between the co-conspirators, in which they discussed the loan application process, and financial records showing how Phoenix and Newman spent their PPP loan funds. Following the close of the government's evidence, both defendants moved for judgments of acquittal, defendants being arrested. Okay, so they're like, look, the evidence was circumstantial. Now, let's get to the judge's analysis, all right? We don't need to read the legal standard. We just want to see what how did the judge interpret it? Why did the judge say, no, there was enough evidence to convict you guys? So here is the analysis. The court addresses the defendant's motions for judgment for acquittal together with their motions for a new trial, starting with Cord Newman, okay? Which they both failed. So Austin St. John, if you replace Cord Newman's name, imagine if Austin St. John pled innocent and he took it to trial. The judge will have the same outcome because, hey, they did the same things. They both submitted false applications. They both intended to misuse PPP funds. And here is the judge analysis. So, Newman challenged the sufficiency of the evidence against him. As both counts, he contests only the knowledge and intent elements regarding count one. Newman asserts that the government failed to prove he knew the unlawful purpose of the agreement and that he acted with the specific intent to defraud. Remember, Austin St. John pretty much said the same thing during his testimony, that he had no idea he was doing something illegal. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Newman posits that the government failed to prove that he knew the unlawful purpose of the agreement and that he knew the monetary transaction involved criminally derived property. But Newman fails to carry his heavy burden, showing that no rational trier of fact could have found the essential elements from the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Indeed, the jury saw and heard substantial evidence that Newman knew the unlawful purpose of the conspiracy and joined it with the intent to further the unlawful purpose. By highlighting some of the evidence in the paragraphs that follow, the court does not intend to exclude other evidence also supporting the verdict. So the government is like, look, man, the judge is like, I'm going to show you why you're guilty based on key evidence presented. For starters, the judge says, hey, the jury could have concluded from Newman's communications with co-conspirators that he knew the scheme was unlawful purpose and intended to further that purpose. Newman's text message with Hill showed that Newman understood he was applying for a government loan. Hill, describing a PPP as a forgiven loan for $225K from the government, which Austin St. John said the same thing. He knew it was a government loan, but didn't know how to get one. And he intended to use it for non-business purposes like investments and personal expenses, which Austin St. John admitted in text messages and on the stand that some of the money was used for bills, personal bills, not business bills, not payroll, just regular bills. He was in a bind. Hill telling Newman to just wait and see how I grow it, them insinuating that they're uninvested. Same thing, Austin St. John was told the same thing. Newman telling Hill he can use the PP funds to buy presents for his sons. Newman also sent Moran the essential information like driver's license and discussed paying him $22,000 for his help applying for the PPP loan. We know Austin St. John sent the 10% too. A rational jury could have found Newman knew these loans were only for business purposes when Moran continually asked him for information pertaining to his business. So remember how Austin St. John, I didn't know, man. I didn't know. Like, dude, you gave him business information. You knew it was a government loan and you still sought to use it for personal bills and invest it. Well, the investments were for so I can hire people in 30 months. They like, ninja. Anyway, he was asking Newman, do you have a copy or can you get a business check for Newman's business bank account? And when the second round of PPP loans became available in January 2021, Newman reminded Moran that he had helped enlist two other co-conspirators for the first round, one being Austin St. John, before indicating his interest in the second round. So Corey Newman was like, Ninja, we about to double up. But this was before all the money got taken. But responding like, oh, I'm so in Moran's questions. You down to mine some gold though, and agreeing to pay Moran's 10% fee. Viewing this evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecution, the court finds that the jury could have reasonably concluded that Newman had the requisite intent because he repeatedly sent his identification and business account information to Moran, which Austin St. John did the same exact thing. He enlisted other people into the scheme. Austin St. John didn't do that. He agreed to pay a cut for the PP funds to Moran and Hill for their help, which Austin St. John did. Agreed to invest the funds with Hill and Spencer rather than spend it on business expenses required by law. This is how the judge is seeing it. Yeah, this is what's going on. And shout out to Calypso who says, Austin St. John really became everything he hated about Saban, really making the phrase die as a hero live long enough to see you become a villain come true, literally and figuratively. Damn.
That's a truthful statement.
Damn, Calypso just came in and cooked Austin St. John. Thank you for the donation, man. Appreciate that. And he was absolutely right. Hey, you don't meet your heroes. Now, this evidence was corroborated by Newman's own financial records, which we would have saw in Austin St. John's. First, the bank account for Newman's business, Corey Newman, had little going on in the months leading up to the June 23rd, 2020, showing a balance of $354. God damn, he was broke, like, Jesus.
Can't you get it through your thick skull that I'm broke? Dead, flat, stony broke? See? I've got $3.85 in my purse.
Then on the June 23rd, 2020, the account received a deposit titled PPP funding, which Austin St. John did the same, for $225,000, and Newman wired $140,000 of it to Hill only a day later. Now, if we go back to the original indictment, you remember Jason Geiger wired approximately $170,000. So the people who think that Austin St. John would have been found innocent because he trusted the wrong people, clearly The judge wouldn't have saw it like that way, and nor would this jury have seen it that way. Okay. Newman went on to spend the remainder. Newman paid Moran $22,000 days after. Newman went on to spend the remainder on personal expenses. He purchased a Chevrolet Silverado, a Harley Davidson motorcycles, meals at restaurants, entertainment, leisure, personal home services, as well as paying child support. Damn, homie. He used the government funds to pay child support. Literally taking a government loan from the government to pay child support. It's an evil world we live in, man. It's an evil world because the crazy thing is, I'm pretty sure he has his ex-wife, soon to be ex-wife, on child support.
It's an evil world we live in.
Imagine that, huh? Newman focuses on the trial testimony, although he concedes that Hill testified he should have known that Moran was filling out fraudulent loan applications because no one receives that much money by simply providing basic information. Newman insists that the testimony does not prove his actual knowledge. Newman further asserts that Hill and Moran lacked the credibility there, that neither of them explicitly testified that Newman knew the purpose of the scheme. This all would be Austin St. John saying. To the contrary, Newman vaguely claims witness testimony indicated that Hill and Moran intentionally misled Newman and others to the scheme's true nature and purpose, which this ninja knew he was getting a government loan, the same as Austin St. John. These arguments fail for several reasons. So why do they fail, Judge? Please tell us. Please tell us. First, his will stated that the credibility determines our sole providence of the jury. So the jury did find those witnesses to be credible. They did find them that, hey, ninja, you scammed. You know what I'm saying? You did it. The jury heard the testimony of multiple co-conspirators, including Hill, Moran, Jason Geiger, Hector Reyes, and Chris McElfresh, as well as case agents, forensic accountant Brandon Stevenson, an individual who received a fraudulent PP loan and quickly returned it because he suspected the fraud. Like, hey, ninja, hey, get me out of that. They like, get me out of that loan. Overall, these witnesses' testimony details specific and supported by the documentary evidence discussed above. In any event, the jury, not the court, makes credibility determination. So, like, the judge is like, look, the jury came to this conclusion. Second, the government can prove criminal conspiracies on circumstantial evidence alone. The jury could have reasonably concluded that Newman understood and agreed to participate in this conspiracy from the circumstantial evidence outlined in Hill's assertion that Newman must have known about the scheme. Like, ninja, you took the government loan and paid child support with it and invested it. Like, they knew. Finally, Newman's characterization of overall witness testimony effectively asks the court to step in and weigh the evidence. Such a reviewing of evidence is improper, and the court declines Newman's invitation to do so. While some evidence may have supported Newman's argument that Hill and Moran misled him, other evidence cut against it. As Newman already conceded, Hill testified that Newman must have understood the illegal nature of the scheme because people do not receive $225,000 for just texting someone their bank and identification information. This is all true. All true. Co-defendants McElfresh testified that the defendants intended to invest the PPP funds to make money for themselves, not pay employees or other business expenses. Moreover, Stevens testified that when he received the PPP loan under similar circumstances, he immediately started the process of returning it because he did not believe he could legally receive such a large amount of money with so little paperwork and verification. As the fact finder in this case, the jury was free to choose among the reasonable constructions of evidence of one which that Newman had requisite knowledge and intent. So the judge basically called it like it is and said the jury's not dumb. In court, Newman, your ass is grass. There go the boys. There go the boys right there. But this idiot is going to likely be sentenced. Now, remember, the sentencing is on May 1st for Jason Geiger, as you can see right here. Notice hearing as to Jason Lawrence Geiger. Sentencing set for May 1st, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. in courtroom 105. Now, this is closed to the public, but trust me, on May 1st, I will be getting his sentence. and letting you know it's likely going to be 2 years probation. But this was for all the people who think that Austin St. John would have been found innocent despite him saying he didn't know. He did the same thing as Corey Newman, got a government loan, sought to invest it, paid some personal bills, absolutely $0 was spent on his business. So there you have it. A judge now rendering judgment, breaking down the guilt. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I'll see you next video. Peace.